Welcome to Spot of Red. Let's have some fun. Let's do a prediction on the Georgia High School Football Championships. There's 8 classes. The games start tomorrow, December 11th. They go through December the 13th. I would like to break down each class, so let's get started. Before I get started on the first game, I use a lot of rankings in the comparisons that I'm about to do, and I want to tell you where I got those. There's a site called Access WDUN. They actually take the composite average of all the rankings from the AJC, Maxwell, Max Prep, Score Atlanta, GPB, 680 The Fan, and Recruit Georgia. They wrap them all together into one ranking for all the classes. I use it all the time. So if you want to reference that, that's how I'm getting my rankings. So let's get started on the first game. It's Monday at 4 p.m. It's Class 1A Division 1. We have the number 1 Prince Avenue Christian Wolverines taking on the number 8 Swainsboro Tigers. So I'll start on the Tigers side. They've scored 434 points and they've allowed 152. They've only passed for 527 yards and they've rushed for over 4,000, which that shows you how much they run. And you'll see this a lot in high school. A lot of high school teams, they run a lot, especially the smaller teams. Until you look at Prince Avenue on the other side, they throw for 4,387 yards, and they also rush for almost 2,000. And look how many points they've scored so far, 640. That is a lot of points. Anyway, we go back over to Swainsboro. The road to the Dome, I'm putting the top 10 teams that they've beat to get to the championship. So Swainsboro has beat number 5 Elbert County 34-28. And also number 9, Lamar County, 18-6. They actually have a 4-star running back and linebacker, DeMello Jones, that's committed to Georgia. So look out for him. On the Wolverines side, I've already mentioned some of their stats. They only beat number 10, Bryan County, 49-14. It's not really their fault that they didn't get to see anyone else. The player to watch for them is Aaron Philo. He's number 11. He's the quarterback. He's a 3-star committed to Georgia Tech. I think if Prince just slows down this running game, you can see Swainsboro literally, that's all they do is run the ball. I think Prince is going to be able to slow them down. So I'm actually going to have Prince winning this championship 28-17, and they are defending champions, so this will be back-to-back titles for them. So that is for Class 1A Division 1. For Monday night's late game at 7 p.m., we have Class 1A Division 2. And this is number 4 Bowdon Red Devils versus the number 2 Manchester Blue Devils. I kind of just put the Battle of the Devils because of both teams. They actually played each other at the very first game of their regular season this year. And Manchester won 21-20. So this is a rematch. If it lives up to the 21-20, like the first game of the season, it should be a really good championship game. Let's look at Bowdon's stats. The Red Devil stats, they've scored 610 points. They've only given up 253. They've passed for 1,983. They've ran for 4,100. So they mostly rush the ball, but they can pass. They've actually beat 3 top 10 teams coming to the Dome. They beat number 7 Greene County, number 10 Dooley County, and then number 1 Shealy, which was a very close game, as you can tell. But to take out the number 1 team is very impressive. The player to watch for them is Jordan Beasley. He's number 8. He's a running back and linebacker. He actually had 9 tackles and 16 carries in the last game. He has played a lot of snaps, which is impressive. Over to Manchester, their stats, they've only scored 419, but they've only given up 107. Now, they rarely pass the ball, and then they rush a lot, similar to the last championship with Swainsboro. They've only beat 1 top 10 team, that was number 3 Clinch County, and their player to watch is Javon Flowers. He's number 1. He's a linebacker and a running back as well. So if it lives up to their first game, this should be a really good football game. They're evenly matched, hence how the first game was. But I'm actually going to have Bowdon getting some revenge, and I'm actually going to pick the same score. I'm going to have them switching to winning 21-20 instead of Manchester. Bowdon is actually returning champ, so they'll be back-to-back champions similar to Prince Avenue. These are the only two classes that have a shot of having a returning champion, which is really cool. It's good to get new blood into the championship. I have Bowdon in this game. The next game is Tuesday at 1 p.m. It's Class 2A. It's the number 6 Rockmart Yellow Jackets versus the number 2 Pierce County Bears. My kids and my wife and a lot of my wife's family actually went to Rockmart. We're actually going to that game at 1 p.m. I'm super excited about getting to the Dome and watching some good high school football. So let's start on the left-hand side with the Yellow Jackets stats. They've scored 541 points this year. They've only given up 180. So their offense is not predicated purely on rushing. So they do pass the ball around 2,200 yards this year with 3,000 yards rushing. So they have a little better of a balance than some high school teams. They beat number 9 Cook and number 5 Toombs County to get to the Dome. The player to watch for them is their quarterback, Callion Thompson. He's number 11. He's got a good arm, and he can keep them in the game. On the right-hand side, we have the Bears stat. They've scored 544, which is similar to Rockmart, but they've only given up 111 points. They have 1,800 yards passing with 3,000 yards rushing. Almost similar. Rockmart passes just a little more. They beat Fellowship Christian number 8 and number 10 Fitzgerald pretty handily to get to the championship game. And their player to watch is Cade Magatha, number 7, their quarterback. He runs a ton of Wildcat. That is their primary play, so to speak. He runs almost 35-plus times a game. So they're going to try to control the game by running the ball and keeping Rockmart's offense off. Rockmart will have to play mistake-free to stay in this game because that defense is so good for Pierce. But I think they can, and I'm actually going to have Rockmart pulling an upset and beating the number 2 Pierce County 24-21, and it'll be their first state title since 1950. Moving on to the 4 p.m. game on Tuesday with Class 4A, you have the number 5 Perry Panthers versus the number 6 Stockbridge Tigers. I'm going to have to sweet talk the wife a little bit and see if I can watch maybe the first half of this game. But it looks like a very good matchup. The Panthers, their stats on the left-hand side, they've scored 531 and given up 261. Now this is balanced, 2,900 yards passing and 2,600 yards rushing. Their top 10 teams going to the Dome that they beat was number 2 Bainbridge and number 5 Stars Mill. And both of them you can see was very close. Look at that 7-3 game against Bainbridge. The players to watch is Calder Jen. He's number 15. He's their quarterback. And he's uncommitted right now, but he is a 3-star. Going over to the Tiger stats, they've scored 617. They've only given up 217. Now, they really love to run the ball, and you'll see 1,800 yards passing with 4,200 yards rushing. So they really like to rely on the running game. For the teams they beat going to the Dome, Benedictine was a big number 1. They were defending champions. They have a highly rated quarterback. That was a big game to win, and they beat them handedly, 45-31. They also beat number 4 Spalding 35-14. So this team can score points, and they can hold very good offenses because Benedictine and Spalding had good offenses. The player to watch for them is Jaden Scott, number 4. He's a running back, and he is a 3-star committed to NC State. Stockbridge is just going to try to run it down Perry's throat. And if Perry can hold them a few times, they might have a good shot at it. But I think it's just going to be a shootout. I'm going to pick Stockbridge to win their first ever title, winning 35-27. But if the game is that close, it should be fun to watch. Moving to the last game on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. This is Class 6A. You'll have the number one team in that class, Thomas County Central, the Yellow Jackets, taking on the Woodward Academy War Eagles, who are ranked number 10. Thomas County actually had 5 championships back in the 90s, but they haven't won one since. Their stats, they have scored 561, only allowed 116. They're pretty balanced again, like 1,900 yards passing, 2,300 yards rushing. To get to the Dome, they beat number 5 Rome 1916 and number 8 Marist 13-7. They actually had to come back against Rome to win that game. Looking at their player to watch is Condarius Reddick. He's number 0. He's a strong safety and wide receiver. He's only a junior, and he's a 4-star committed to Auburn. Then the War Eagles, they've only scored 457, and they've given up 158. They've got a good balance of their rushing attack compared to their passing. They pass a little more, 2,200 over their 1,700 yards rushing. But let's look at the gauntlet that they took to get to the championship game. They beat number 9 Houston County. Then they beat number 2 Gainesville. And if you watch my earlier video that I did on Class 6A, I actually had the Red Elephants winning the state championship in this class. Then they went on to also beat the number 3 Douglas County. Now, both of those last 2 games were only by 3 points, but they're finding ways to win. They have enough balance on offense, and they have enough defense. They played 2 really good teams. Just to mention real quick, their player to watch is C.J. Hurd. He is number 1. He's their safety, and he's a 3-star, and he hasn't committed anywhere yet. But can they continue to find ways to win in this championship game against a stout defense? I believe so. This is going to be my first big upset. I actually have the Woodward Academy War Eagles beating Thomas County Central Yellow Jackets 17-14, and it will be Woodward's first title since 1980. We move on to the first game on Wednesday, which will be at 1 p.m., and that's the Class 3A Championship, which will be the 5th-ranked team, Savannah Christian Raiders, versus the Cedar Grove Saints, which are number 2 in the state in that class. Don't let that 5-5 regular season record fool you. They had to play 3 Class 7A teams to begin the season, including Colquitt County, Mill Creek, Collins Hill. Their points for and points against is going to be a little off, especially that points against, because they played 3 teams 4 classes above them. That really affects that points against at 385. I looked for stats all over for them, and I could not find any solid stats. So I'm going to go ahead and start on their side just because I couldn't find any. Their road to the Dome was pretty impressive. They beat the number 1 team, Calvary Day, 49-42. They beat number 3, Mary Persons, 28-14. They beat number 10, Hebron Christian. So they beat a lot of good football teams, especially Calvary Day. You see that score, 49-42. It was just a shootout. The player to watch for them, and I actually have 2, because I couldn't find the stats, so I thought I'd add 2 players. E.J. Colson, number 1, he's our quarterback. He's a junior. He's a 3-star. He's currently committed to UCF. They have another junior, Bo Walker, who wears number 0. He's a running back, and he's committed to our Dogs. So they have plenty of offense. If we look on the other side, let's look at Savannah Christian. The Raiders, they've scored 600, only given up 245. Their passing and rushing, they've passed for 1,900, not too bad, but they've rushed for 3,500. That's a ton. They also beat 3 ranked teams getting to the championship game. They beat number 9 Carver Columbus, number 7 Lumpkin County, and number 6 Morgan County. Their player to watch is Elijah Griffin. He wears number 95. He's also a junior, and he's currently uncommitted, but he is a 5-star. So this game is loaded with some talent, and both of them can score the ball, and this is a coin toss. I was trying to decide which way to go. I did an average on how many points they score per game and how much they give up. I had to take those 3 games off of Cedar Grove, the Saints, just to kind of see actually what they did within their class. I'm going to pick Cedar Grove to win this game. I was looking at Calvary Day and Mary Persons, the teams that they beat, and they like to run the ball too, and that's what Savannah Christian primarily does. So I think they're going to pull out a close game. They're going to win 30-28, and it would be their 5th state title. Moving on to the 4 p.m. game on Wednesday, we have the Class 5 championship game, which will have the number 1 Coffee Trojans versus the number 2 Creekside Seminoles. This is the only matchup where the 2 top-ranked teams in the class play each other for the championship. I actually did a breakdown on this earlier as well, and I actually had picked the Jefferson Dragons, who Creekside beat in the semifinal. But let's go over this. So we'll start on the left-hand side with the Trojan stats. That's the Coffee Trojans. So we have, they only give up 86 points this whole year, which is nuts. They've scored 552. So they like to run the ball. They have enough passing, 1,700 yards, and then they have the 3,700 yards rushing. The only top 10 team that they beat is my high school, Cartersville Hurricanes. They beat the number 3 Hurricanes 33-18 last Friday. And their player to watch is Fred Brown, and I mentioned him in my video. He's number 0. He rushed for 206 yards versus Cartersville, and he's uncommitted right now. He is a 5-star, but he hasn't picked a school yet. Going over to the Seminoles of Creekside, they've scored 577. They've given up 236. I mentioned this in my other video too. You have to take off some points there. They played Mater Day out in California, which is a very high-profile high school football powerhouse. They scored 62 on Creekside. But look at Creekside. They passed the ball 2,500 yards. They've rushed for almost the same amount as Coffee has. And they've had a tougher road to get to the championship game. They beat the Dragons of Jefferson, the ranked 14, 28-17. They beat Warner Robins, who Warner Robins has won 2 state titles in the past 3 years. They beat them 35-14. They also beat number 10 Dalton Catamounts 49-24. So they did it pretty handily. The player to watch for them is Roderick McCrary. He's number 0. He's their running back. But this team is very balanced. I'm going to have the number 2 team, Creekside, upsetting the number 1 Coffee Trojans 17-13. I think this is going to be a good defensive battle because Coffee, look, they've only given up 86 points all year. So it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to come down to a lot of football games. It's going to come down to who turns the ball over, who doesn't have a lot of penalties. But it should be just a fun, good defensive matchup to watch. I have Creekside taking their 2nd title in this game. Now to the last game, which is at 7 p.m. It's the largest class in the state of Georgia. It's Class 7A. It's all the heavy hitters, and this should be a fun game because both of these teams like to air it out, and that's what I put on the little quotations there. But you have the ranked 9th Milton Eagles taking on the number 2 Walton Raiders. If you look at these stats for Milton, the Eagles have scored 506. They've given up 218. They've passed for 3,800 yards. They've only rushed for 1,600. So they definitely focus more on passing than keeping it on the ground. Their road to the Dome, they beat 2 very good teams. If you know anything about Georgia football, you definitely know these 2 teams. It's number 6 Grayson and number 3 Colquitt County. They barely beat the Packers of Colquitt County. But they handled the Rams pretty well with a 45-35 win. Their player to watch is Luke Nickel. He wears number 5. He's a quarterback. He's only a junior. He threw for 434 yards against Grayson, which is pretty crazy. He is a 3-star, and he's committed to the Hurricanes of Miami. Going over to the Walton Raiders, they have scored 695 points this year and only given up 217. Like Milton, they love to throw the ball. They actually have 4,000 yards passing, and they can run the ball more efficiently with 2,400 yards of rushing. They only beat one top 5 team, and that was the number 5 Carrollton Trojans, and they beat them pretty bad, 56-35. Their player to watch is their quarterback, Jeremy Helinski. He wears number 12, and they really like to throw it just as much as Milton. So this game should just be a lot of offense, just throwing it up and down the field. This might come down to maybe a few tip passes. But I think with Walton's ability to run the ball a little more, they might be able to use that to balance out their passing game. And for this big game, I'm still going to have it close. I think Milton can keep it close. And I will have Walton winning their first state title 41-35. Hey, as always, thank you for listening to Spider Red. Hit that subscribe and like. Later.